we'd like to acknowledge that, yeah, we're on Ghana land, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge the fact that this always has been and always will be Ghana land. So, most of you, well, you might not know me. I'm Bill Hansbury. I'm one of the developers of WordCracker, and I'm online with Sally Andrew and Michael Shanahan, and together the three of us.
Hello.
And together the three of us are the WordCracker online. So at the end of the training tonight, if we get there, which we hope we will, there is a deal. There'll be a few deals offering people around use of the WordCracker. As you come on, can you please put yourself on mute, or Michael will put you on mute, but it'd be good if you can beat us to it.
It's automatically muting people that come in.
Good. Well, that's easy. So don't take yourself off mute then.
No, there's too many people for that.
Yeah, that's right. Because we've got a huge crowd, like I said in the email I sent out this afternoon, we'll do questions on the chat. So fire up the chat, and we'll try and keep track of common questions to address perhaps at the end. And we will hopefully allocate some time to answer those at the end. But if you've got a question that you just can't get to us, or we didn't acknowledge, you've always got our, you can always email WordCracker, and you can email us. Okay, so that's the end of the housekeeping. I'm going to hand over to Sal, who, for those of you who don't know, will just give a brief history of the WordCracker. Over to you, Sal.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, so in 2020, COVID time, Bill and I had nothing better to do than to write a manual for the physical WordCracker. Quite a few of you will have seen that we have a manual board which has magnets on it. There's one behind Bill in his room, there's one behind me, kind of, that you can see. And we developed this because we work with children in intervention. And so this very hands-on tool, it has been an absolute lifeline for us, you know. So that went along quite well, very well actually, and we still use our physical WordCrackers every single day when we're tutoring. But there was a demand, you know, in the classroom that teachers wanted to use it, but it was a little bit small. So we decided we'd go straight out and make an online version, and that's when Michael came in on it, and his clever brain has just absolutely turned it into a phenomenal tool that you can use in the classroom or with your students in intervention. And the reason we're on tonight is to show you, that's been going around for, I don't know, about 18 months or so. But in the last 6 months to a year, Michael's done a huge number of developments on the online version. So it really is, the sky's the limit with where you take it now. And that's why we're on here tonight, to show you that. So what we're going to do is give you a little demo now. Just for, I don't know how many people are on here who've never seen the WordCracker, but we're going to start at base camp. So Michael's going to fire up the online version of the Cracker to show you.
Yep. Got that?
Yeah. So if he goes to the presets there, we already have a lot of teaching embedded in the WordCracker. So if you're new to Morphology, this is a great place to start, you know, and especially if you do the online training. I don't know where to start, I start here. But if you're working right down at base camp with the little ones, you're probably going to start with the most well-used suffix in the English language, and that's suffix s. So you can see there in suffix s, we have what we call a preset, and Michael's going to load that preset up. Okay. Right. Now, when we're working with young students, we automatically start to get them familiar with the concept of bolting on a little bit onto the end of the word, be it S, ing, ed, and so on. But this is, as I say, base camp for our students. So I'm going to get Bill to help me out here. I'm going to assume that in my previous lesson with Bill, I've taught him what a noun is, because there's a lot of meta language involved that we need to get across to our students before we even start talking about morphology. So, Bill, remember last week we were talking about what a noun is. Can you remind me what a noun is?
A noun is a word for a person, place, or thing.
Exactly, that's right. So I'm going to get you to bring down the word cat. Okay. All right. So cat, Bill, just give me a sentence with that word in.
Lonely people sometimes have a cat.
Have a cat. So there we are. It's a person, place, or thing. All right. So it is a noun, isn't it? Do you agree, Bill, that it's a noun?
Yes, because it's a thing. Some people might say it's a person.
That's right. My friend, she lives on her own, and she doesn't only have one cat, she has 2 cats. So we're going to change that word now, because we can't substitute cat, she has 2 cats. So I'm going to get Michael to bring down this S. And so we can read the word cat, or we can read the word cats. All right, so the S suffix is changing that word cat. What job's it doing, Bill? How is it changing cat into cat? Has it got a job to do?
Yeah, it's telling us that there's more than one cat.
Yes, and the word we use for that, if you didn't know, Bill, might not have taught him this previously, is plural. So can you see we've already got noun, and we've already got plural here. And now I'm going to tell you that's called a suffix when we put a bit on the end of it. What's it called, Bill?
Suffix.
A suffix. So suffix S can make a noun plural. I'm making this quite short for you folks because, you know, I know you know this, but I'm just trying to show you the sort of teaching that you can bring into your students. All right, so we would go through some more examples of that. So I could say 1 tin, Bill, and lots of
Tins.
tins. That's right. Okay. All right, but last week also, Bill, because you're a super duper student and you can take more than one concept at a time, I also taught you what a verb is. Can you remind me what a verb is?
A verb is a doing, having, or being word.
That's correct. A verb is an action word. Oh gosh, we've got the rain here now. It's hard to hear you. So I'm going to get Michael to bring down the word spend. Okay. So I spend money, but Bill
spends money on his cat.
Money on his cat, so that he's not lonely. Okay, so yes, you get the idea. Now, why are we doing this with students? Okay, that's what we really want to know. Why are we bothering about this S going on the end? Well, number one, you know, if you're working in intervention as we are, for a child to decode spends can be quite tricky. So most of us as teachers over the years, we've seen that word in a book with young students who are struggling, we'd have put our finger over the S or taught the student to put their finger over the S so they can work out the base word. So that helps with our decoding, doesn't it? So if we can take off a little bit of the word, be it a prefix or a suffix, it helps with decoding. But it's also, from the very early days, we want to train our students that very often there's a morphological content to a word. So we say chase the base, you know. So if I ask a student to spell spends, they might go spends because that's what they hear. And they don't hear that D in there because it gets sort of gobbled up by the S. But if I can say, you know, what's the base word? I spend, then they can hear the base word, they can decode it, and then bolt on the suffix S. So we would go through multiple examples of this, keep reminding Bill what a noun is and what a verb is. But I might think, oh, I want some more words than this. So there's a couple of ways we could do that. We could get Michael to just click on the plus sign at the top, and we could let's say a book. Okay, can you type in book? All right, and he could put that in there. So one book, Bill, lots of
books.
Books. What have we done? Have we made a noun plural or have we changed the verb?
We've made a noun plural in this case because we're talking about a noun that's a book. That's
right. So that's one way you could do it. Or Michael could go to the presets. And we have, if you look along there, we've got loads and loads of presets. So we could just pick a couple in there as Michael finds. So I could see ball, okay, and that can be added to your list. So
and Sal, I'll just point out those, for those that haven't seen, that those VCC, VVC, they are ending patterns on words. They're not the normal patterning you see when we talk about word complexity. These are end patterns, which are important to teaching students about what we do when we're adding suffixes.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bill. And while I'm at it, Bill, we have two colours to our suffixes. So you notice the S suffix is blue. And again, my advanced student over here will be able to tell me, why is it a blue suffix, Bill?
Because blue is a cool colour and it's a consonant suffix. So the cool colour means that it's a safe, you can just add, most of the time, you can just add a consonant suffix onto the end of the base and you don't have to do any changing to the spelling of the base.
That's correct. Whereas our red suffixes all begin with a vowel and they make a spelling rule. So we've got that element of danger in there. And in our presets, we take you through, you know, whether you're just adding a suffix, whether you're doubling, whether you're dropping the E and so on, all the major spelling rules. But that's probably all I wanted to show you, that from the very basic level. And so I'll hand over now to Michael.
Excellent. Thank you, Sally. Yeah, so the whole thing is color-coded as well. So prefixes are green because they're generally safe as well. We don't have to change prefixes much. Bases and roots are black and the suffixes are red and blue. And if you type in a suffix and it's a consonant suffix or a vowel suffix, it'll put it in the right color for you. So I thought I'd just give an overview. If you've already used the word cracker before, you probably are already familiar with what Sally was talking about. I thought I'd give you an overview of the new features of the word cracker, because we could probably spend the whole time just talking about morphology and teaching morphology, but really we wanted to use this time to show you the new features because it is quite complicated. And there is a lot of functionality, and I think it just needs a little bit of explanation. But feel free, if you're lost at any time, to remember you can put a question in the chat and we will have time at the end to answer questions. Or if it's really important, we can just stop and do it. Sally was talking about patterning bases. So we generally pattern bases to see if they're safe or not. So down here, we've got the 4 safe patterns, which you can drag up. So this is a vowel consonant word. So I can drag this up and it will tell me now that this is safe and I can just add any suffix to this because it's a safe pattern. So I can add Y to make bendy. Or we can also auto pattern. So if I put on auto pattern, it automatically patterns what's there, which means if I type something in, it's automatically going to pattern that for me and tell us whether you can just add it or whether it's a dangerous word. Like if I put pop, we know that's a dangerous pattern. So that'll tell us to beware because this isn't a safe pattern, and it'll give you that pattern. And then down the bottom here are those common dangerous patterns as well that give you that beware sign. Really, these are here because I find this really difficult and really complicated. And so I've tried to make it give as much scaffolding as possible to the teacher, because I know when you're teaching, it's really difficult. You know, there's so much going on and it's very easy to forget this stuff. So trying to make it as easy as possible in this complicated world of morphology. And just another quick little thing, you might have noticed I tucked this note away, but each of these presets has got a reminder note on how to teach it. So it's just a little dot point list to refresh your memory. You know, I find this quite handy to go, oh, what am I teaching? Bring it up and just do a quick little reminder. All right, that's what I'm doing, or even bring it down during the lesson to have a look at something and then you can tuck it away again. So that's basic functionality. This is in the choose morphemes mode where we've got all of the presets. So just so you know, these presets that are here that are built in, these lesson presets, they all relate to the content on the website. And so if we go to the website and I just open up the site in another tab, we've got our members content area where all of these presets have a page to themselves, and they walk you in a scripted way, step by step, to say, how do you teach these? And there's also downloads of all the templates that you need, spelling rules, games, and so on, for you to use when you're teaching. I'll just make this full screen again, and I'll go back to the start. So I'm just going to return to the login, because when you first load this new version of the WordCracker, this is what you'll see. You'll land on this new home screen, which is basically your spot to set yourself up. If you land here for the first time, this will just be empty, and there'll be step-by-step instructions on how to set up your first profile. So I've got a few profiles here: general, literacy, math, science, year 3, year 4. You can have 10 different profiles, and each of these profiles is a complete version of the WordCracker where you can save your settings. It also has an option of sharing profiles, and we've really built this for colleagues, schools, or businesses that might share resources with each other. So I can create a whole lot of presets, which I'll talk you through how to do it, and save them and then share them. So we're imagining, for example, that a school coordinator, or someone in a position who's deciding what the curriculum is, might set up a whole lot of presets and then share it with the teachers. And so then the teachers are all using the same language, using the same presets. And
explaining, going into depth in the same types of words, Michael.
Yeah, and there's that consistency there. So, even if we go beyond literacy, it may be maths vocabulary presets that are shared amongst the maths teachers. So, when you're introducing fractions, you talk about the base fract, meaning to break. So, there's a whole lot of options there. I won't spend too much time on this, but basically you can share profiles with each other. And you can see here with shared profiles, I've got one from Sally. So if I open this up and go to presets and go to save presets, these are Sally's presets that I'm looking at, and I can't edit them because they're hers. But here she's made one for the Olympics. So there's Sally's Olympics preset. So if you imagine I'm in a school or in a workplace, I can just use, everyone can just use this same set of presets. I'll just go back to the login. And I'll just show you my general one. So this is what I use. This is my day-to-day working save, group of save presets. Just a few little functions here. You can turn this full screen on and off to fill the screen. All morphemes is a mode where you just get all the morphemes that are included in the website lesson plans on the screen at once, just as a kind of an open exploration. Presets we've had a look at. I'll quickly show you that we have matrices. So for the bases that are included in the lesson plans on the website, we've got matrices. So we've just got one base here and all of the affixes that go with it. And we have a section on games. More games to come, of course, but if you're teaching suffix S, we've got suffix S bingo game with a spinner that you can use either, in tutoring or with a class. But most of the action we're talking about tonight is in this presets area. So just as a quick tour, we've got this morpheme chooser over here, and this lets you add in and take away all the morphemes that are included in the training. So you can create your own little custom setups here. Or if you're doing suffix S, you may have seen me do this before. Say I'm doing suffix S, but I want to have ES in there as well. I can just click ES and then I click go, and now I've got that on my board. So there's that kind of basic functionality there. And these are all the presets that, as I mentioned before, have lessons on the website that show you how to use it. We have vocabulary presets. So we went through the Australian glossary, vocabulary glossary, and we pulled out key terms that we thought would be useful, and that were terms that have some morphological meaning to them, that we thought might be useful for you. This is really just a drop in the ocean of what you might be looking at. It's really just to get you started in thinking about this. And hopefully there's enough terms here to get you started, you know, enough common terms under maths and English and science and so on. But if you're like me, you'll probably fairly quickly outgrow them, or you'll have a student that asks a question and says, what about this? Which won't be in here, because obviously we can't have, you know, hundreds of thousands in here. It's just really a starting point. And this, so if we look at addition and I just click on that, it brings up a preset for addition, which is add suffix ITION, and there's a teacher note there that tells you where this originates from and how the morphology of that word.
And some of you will notice that ITION on its own is probably 2 morphemes, but we've made decisions about when to keep it a bit simpler. Michael, is it worth pulling down one and turning on meanings as well so people can see that the meanings fire up as well?
Yes, so each of these do have meanings attached to them. So if I turn on meanings down here, which is just a little magnifying glass on the paper, and bring it down, then we get the meanings of these morphemes. So we've got add meaning to join, and ition, which is the result of. So the result of joining things together is addition. Yes. So while I'm here, I might as well show you these other features down here. So I've showed you the auto pattern. We've also got this little ear, which will read
addition,
whatever's on the word cracker, will read it to you. And sometimes that's quite handy.
suffix base add,
when we're talking about spelling, because if there's a spelling mistake in there, you can get it to say it. And it really helps kids. Kids can often hear that there's a spelling mistake because the word doesn't sound quite right compared to being able to read it. So it's a handy little tool. And we'll leave the www for a minute. I'll show you how that works in a sec. So if I go back to choose morphemes, we were in these vocabulary presets. So all this green area here, up the top here, these 3, they're all presets. And what that means is if you click on them, it clears everything on the board and just gives you those things in this green section. So then we've got this blue section, which is really a library of additional morphemes and affixes that you can add into your set. So we've got safe patterns. Now these are really useful because, especially in the early days of teaching it, you know, often you're just using words that have safe patterns, so you don't have to worry about spelling rules. So a safe pattern, if you're not sure, means that if the base ends with a vowel consonant consonant or a vowel consonant, or, you know, these patterns, then you can add any suffix, even if it's a vowel suffix, and it's generally safe. So for kids early on exploring, it's good to have a library of these words that are safe and they can add affixes to them without, you know, getting too messed up by those complex spelling rules. And then we have another library of words that are specifically for the spelling rules. So if we look at our lesson presets, we've got this spelling rules column. So we've got lesson presets for the safe patterns, and then the add, double, drop, change, common spelling rules that we use in morphology. I don't have time to go through them now, but each of those has their own word list. And it's also so that there's a bit of variety, so kids aren't just seeing the same words all the time. And so that on the spot, you don't have to type in something and, you know, perhaps make a mistake, or...
Yeah, it's very easy to tell
difficult when you're
not
under pressure. Yeah, that's right. So there's a little library of words for those spelling rules. And then we've got a library of prefixes, and we've arranged them in Greek, Latin, Old English, Romance, Modern and Hybrid, and Technical. These are very loose categories. And, you know, it's actually quite difficult to categorize things because, you know, a lot of these Romance prefixes, for example, you know, actually come from Latin or Greek. And so you'll see doubling up. And, you know, even though something is Latin, so we've got agri in Latin, and it's also in Technical, so, and in Modern and Hybrid. So there's doubling up there, but really this is just as a bit of a starting point. If you're looking for a particular prefix, it's a little bit difficult to begin with, but actually fairly quickly you get the hang of where you might find particular prefixes depending on whether they're Greek, Latin, or Old English. And, you know, a good talking point with kids as well when you're looking at the kind of morphemes that are in these. And then we've got our bases and roots. Again, same, they're all arranged in the same columns. And there's quite a few. There's literally thousands that we've put in here, but it doesn't take long to discover that the one you want is not in here. Because we just can't, we're not trying to make this into like another Edam Online or a dictionary. It's really just a teaching tool. And these libraries are really just a quick fix for you if you're, you know, looking for something in the middle of a lesson or planning something with a short amount of time. And then we've got the same with suffixes. So there's a bit of a library here of affixes that you can just add in. So I'm in addition and I can just add in, you know, any of these other morphemes and they just add on. They don't clear the board because they're not a preset. So these blue ones just add them in, just like these buttons down here, add them in. So that's the general layout, but really where the power of this new version comes is the ability to save your own presets. And this is my working set of presets that I use each week. And you can arrange these however you want. It's up to you to organize them however you want. There's a little checkbox up here. See, I've got vocabulary, weekly lessons. So what I do each week, see, we're in week 4. I just go through and I make a quick preset for kids depending on where they're at, so that when I'm in the lesson with them, it just takes, you know, 1 second for me to go in here and bring up the preset for Iris, and we're ready to go. And we can, you know, talk about this maybe when we're doing our review section, or maybe it's the focus of the lesson. Then I've got preset modifications. So what I've done here is taken some of these lesson presets that are built in and just modified them for my own use. You know, I have a slightly different meaning that I've added when I do suffix S. See, I've got new verb meaning there. Suffix Y, I've got some changes too. So I've just kind of changed them a bit to suit me and put words in there that I like better than the ones that are in the preset. I've got extra rules. So these are not in the presets, but these are ones that, you know, as I teach, I add new ones on, and I'm adding them all the time. And then I've got a student progress. So these are the students, and each time I teach them a new suffix or prefix or base, I add it into their progress. So if at any time I'm doing a revision with them, I can just quickly pull up this preset and I know that they've been taught all of these. And see, the bases and roots are empty. So we can now just, you know, with the kid, we might just sit down and make words together and make up our own bases. And I can be confident that I've already taught these suffixes and what they mean. Now that's how I've organized it, but you're free to do whatever you want. You know, this little checkbox up here lets you change this heading, change it to rules. And now let's have a look at how you might save something. So maybe if I start with a preset, so let's start with a built-in preset. Let's start with suffix S, and let's say I want to change this. So there are save buttons here, and which save button, which column I press the save button in is where this is going to be saved into that column. So if I hit save on here, save screen comes up. And now I've got these morphemes here ready to go. And now I've got access to the teacher note. So I can now change this teacher note to be whatever I want it to be. Put in my little lesson notes, which is what I've done on those other ones. You see there's no option to save it now. That's because it needs to have a name. So it's telling me I need to put a name in. So I'll just call it test. I can put in a short description into that, add whatever I want into here. And now let's say I thought, oh no, actually, oops, I meant to add suffix ES. I can just cancel that. I can go back and add ES. I can hit save again, and it's kept everything that I've done. And now I've got suffix ES here as well, ready to save into my preset. The real power of this comes with being able to add your own custom morphemes. So you'll see down here at the moment, it says add custom morphemes using the plus buttons above and set their meanings here. these will be converted to tiles when they're saved. So I haven't got any custom morphemes on here at the moment, so that's why this message is here. Let's say I wanted to add a base. Let's say I wanted to add kick into this. As soon as I do that, now the custom base meanings come up, and you see I've got kick here, and I can enter a meaning for kick. What's kick? What does kick mean? To strike with your foot. So if I bring that down and I turn on meanings, you can see I've got that live, that meaning. Let's say you're not sure what kick means or whatever base you've put in here. This is where the www button comes in, and this will look up whatever you've put on the cracker, even if it's separated into different, bases and prefixes and suffixes. It takes it all together and looks it up. And you can choose either to look it up on Wiktionary or Edam Online. The default is Wiktionary. Edam Online is fantastic, but it does have ads if you're not a member, and sometimes ads, maybe you don't want to have them up in front of your kids or in the classroom, but Wiktionary is fairly generic and very handy. So I can click www, it looks up whatever's on the word cracker and brings it up in a meaning. Being a little bit slow. Can you hear that lightning? It's
I've got
surrounded by it. And so this looks up kick in Wiktionary, and it's great actually. It gives you the pronunciation, the etymology. There you go, wasn't too bad. To strike out with the foot, to sink at the knees. So I won't go through this, but you can even grab text from here, right click and copy, close this, and then you can paste that in as your meaning. So you can quite quickly build up a preset with your own affixes and your own meanings. If you're not happy with any of the meanings of the supplied ones, you can just remake ones of your own. You can even put a little note to yourself in here if you like, because you're the only one seeing these. So you can set it all up however you want and then hit save. And now kick will be turned into a tile. So here's my test one. I click on that, and now I've got kick here as a tile. And I drag it down on the cracker, and you can see it's got my meaning that I put on there. Here's my little teacher note that I added in. So this is really handy and powerful. It means you can basically create whatever you want. You could use this to create your own matrices, just with one base and multiple affixes.
And the word cracker will treat kick just like it will any other tile. If you want to put the end patterning on it, it'll do that for you.
It'll pattern it. It'll read it.
Kick.
And we can even make kicks and look that up. So anything that you put on there, you can look up. We might want to know the history of that word. So we might want to, rather than Wiktionary, you could choose to look it up in Edam Online. And now you've got kicks coming up in Edam Online. Sorry about my slow connection. So very handy to do that. And so I think in addition to this, it's really useful to be able to use this beyond just literacy. So I use the word cracker a lot because I also tutor maths, and I find that using vocabulary presets in maths really helps kids learn stuff and understand stuff. Are there any questions that are coming up, Bill, about any of that? I know I've gone through that quite fast. I'm happy to keep going on.
I think we've covered the questions that have come up about making tiles.
Yeah,
great.
Michael, you've answered a lot of the questions just in your demo.
Do you want to just pause for a minute, just see if there's any?
Sure.
Give a minute. If you want to put a question in the chat box now, if there's something that's not quite clear on, feel free to type it before we go on to the big stuff.
Does it stay with its base already? Okay, well, I'll just keep going on and you can just shout out.
There's a question from a BH, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So if we have a look at, I know that mostly we're talking about literacy, but actually this gets me quite excited because I think vocabulary is really important across the curriculum. And, we talk about morphology and literacy, and even with literacy, that's fairly new, but I actually get great results with maths, with difficult things, things that kids find difficult to remember. So for example, I've got one here for measurement. So distance, mass, and volume. And I've just built this up over time, depending on, what kids find difficult or not. So I've got my notes here, that are the conversions. So, meter, we've got a meter, a kilometer is 1,000 meters, and so on. Let's stick that out of the way. And so this is really useful because I find kids find it difficult to remember that a centimeter, there's 100 centimeters in a meter. And so I talk them through the meanings of these, and I give them cards. So if I give them a centimeter card, I give them the meanings of the morphemes on it, and it really helps them remember. So meter, for example, means measure. And so if we know that meter means measure, then we look at centi, and kids are usually pretty good with centi because we can talk about century, talk about cricket, you make a century, what does that mean? How many years in a century? We can talk about how many cents in a dollar, and they can get to the point where they realize that cent means 100. And so a centimeter is 100th of a meter. So there's 100 centis in a centis in a meter. So meter means measure, centi is 100 or 100th of a centimeter. So they remember centi is 100, it's really helpful. And if they remember that milli means 1,000th, so milli is 1,000th, then there's 1,000 millimeters in a meter. Kilo means 1,000, so kilometer. So they have cards for these. It means that if they remember that milli is 1,000th and kilo is 1,000 with meter, then when we're talking about liter, which is a measurement of fluid, then we can have a kiloliter and they know that it's 1,000 liters, and we can have a milliliter and they know that it's 1,000th of a liter. So you get a lot of bang for buck with kids learning these prefixes and adding them to bases, because now if they're unsure, they don't have to remember all these different versions. Even byte, if we're talking about computers, the same thing works. So a kilobyte is 1,000 bytes. Mega is 1,000,000, so a megabyte is 1,000,000 bytes. Giga is 1,000,000,000, so you can have a gigabyte, you could have a gigawatt, you could have a gigaliter of water. And so I find these maths vocabulary presets really useful. And what I'll often do at the start of a session, which is why I've got these as presets, is I'll just quickly bring them up. And so see, I'm working with Matilda at the moment on percentage. And so I've already taught her this, but during our review part of the session, I would quickly bring this up and I'd say, okay, these are all, just a reminder, these are all about breaking things up. So what does fract mean? And she'll tell me fract is to break. We add suffix ion. So that means this is the state or act of something being broken up. So that's what a fraction is. It's a part of
broken
something.
state.
That's right. And decim means 1/10. And, you know, when I'm introducing this to them, I say, actually, this comes from tax, the old tax system, or tithe, where everyone had to give 10% of their income. So decim comes from there. So decim means 1/10. So decimal is 1 broken into 10. So this is all terminology for how numbers are broken. So they remember that. And then when we're talking about percent, Well, we already know that cent means 100 and per means for each. So percent is for each 100. So it's a special kind of fraction where it's out of 100. And then we can have percentage, we can have percentile, we can have fraction. So it might be as quick as just a couple of minutes that we will use a preset like that as a quick review. Or if a kid's struggling to remember what percent is, I'll say to them, hold on, what does per mean for each? Cent is 100 for each 100. Oh yeah, so it's just a quick little extra bit of scaffolding for kids. You know, that's in basic maths, but I also use it in a lot of other situations. You know, today I did one with a secondary student. She's actually a really good reader, but has trouble with comprehension, particularly science. So she's doing her project at the moment on soil and how that nitrogen cycle in the soil works. And I get kids to keep a diary of words that they find tricky either to spell or understand, and we work on them. And so my homework for this week was the prefix azo, because she came up with a word in her study, diazotroph, and she was saying she doesn't know what that means. It wasn't in her dictionary, and she wasn't sure how to spell it. And so I took that on as my homework, and it turns out that azo means it's related to nitrogen. So that's really useful. So it's particularly because she's doing soil study, and di means two or double, and in this case, 2 nitrogen atoms. And troph means to feed or nourish. So diazotroph is an organism in the soil that takes 2 chunks of nitrogen and it feeds or nourishes the plants. So you can see that morphology and bringing meaning to this opens up that kind of vocabulary discussion with a kid. And while they might not remember this straight away, you know, they probably won't remember that troph means to feed or nourish, but it gives them another way in understanding words. And so I am gradually introducing, for example, science-based morphemes, and we make a card, and each week we review it, and she remembers what they mean. And so it's actually quite surprising how quickly you can build up a library of meaningful morphemes that then help them understand words. And often kids can intuitively understand them as well. She was able to guess that bact is bacteria. And there's a type of bacteria, I'm going to forget what it is now, that's why these teacher notes are so handy. Yeah, Azobacter. So bacter is one who. So these are bacteria that feed on nitrogen and add it to the soil. So I don't know, I just find that quite exciting to see a kid who really struggles with vocabulary and comprehension. You see the lights go on and it's not just me talking, it becomes a real discussion. And she's, you know, we're making up words, we're putting things together, we're looking them up. We thought this one was pretty funny. Azole, so related to nitrogen, and anything with suffix OLE is an organic compound. And we've got to cut off that O so we don't have 2 O's together. And so it was pretty funny that we had a word.
And Michael, every time this student comes across di, they've got a chance of remembering that it means 2, and bact is related to bacteria, and troph is related to, was it feed?
Troph is feed or nourish, yeah.
So, you know, immediately what sprang to my mind being an ex-PE teacher is hypertrophy and atrophy, you know, either muscles wasting or muscles building.
Hyper and hypo is hard to remember, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, right. So this isn't just word local. This is what we're trying to do, is build morphological webs in kids' heads, which will help them make sense of other words.
Yeah, that's right. And anything you put on here, if you're not sure about it, you can look it up. So this is quite scientific, and so it's not on Edam Online. If I go back to Wiktionary and look it up, you know, you can look it up, AZO plus OLE, any class of 5-membered unsaturated something or other. Here are cycles. There's another one from my list. Heterocycles, having 3 carbon atoms. I mean, it's quite complicated, and this isn't a replacement for learning the meanings of these words, but it provides another hook for remembering. And you really see the lights come on for kids when they come to grips with the concept that language is made up of these chunks of meaning. And a lot of them, even though they are tricky words, you can often intuitively work out what it means if you have the skill to look at it in this way, if you have the skill to look for the base and find the base and kind of work your way towards coming up with a meaning for it. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, so
if I can just jump in, Michael.
Yeah.
I just saw a comment from Brooke saying very handy in biology for nurses, and Brooks has kind of made the point that those Latin and Greek roots, which do dominate the health sciences, do lots of kids or lots of people's heads in, because often they're unrelated words. So we're trying to help people see the word bits or parts or morphemes that are common across lots of words. So when they strike a new word they've seen, they might recognise a single morpheme in it and go, that's got something to do with nitrogen if it's azo. So what subject teachers can do is have a quick look through the tricky vocab that might be in a topic, and just do what Michael did, make a couple of presets, and at the beginning of lessons, just like Michael does with a single student, just activate prior knowledge and go, okay, folks, remember, whenever you see diet means 2, whenever we see azo, it's relating to night, wherever we see biome, it's I don't know what the other one was. What was the one relating to bacteria? Bacto.
Yeah,
whenever we see bacto, it means bacteria. So it's a great way to I guess make the vocab the quite specific and domain related vocab for subjects a bit more accessible for young people.
Yeah, that's right.
Comment came up about the spelling of meter.
Yes.
If you don't spell it, because the 2 ways are acceptable, aren't they? M-E-T-E-R and M-E-T-R-E. So you can make your custom morpheme.
Yes, and I came across that one because when I was making that, I wondered what the story was with meter and meter. And did I put the note in?
Oh, I know that. And guess what? I've forgotten it.
Yeah, so meter in Australian and British, ER in US. Now, this is because meter comes from Greek, and this is how it's spelled. This is the base, meter, and it's different from a meter, if that makes sense. So we, British and Australians, spell it M-E-T-R-E, but the actual base is M-E-T-E-R. And so I've put the actual base in there. But yeah, it's a weird spelling thing, but I wish I'd put the note in, because
base with RE if you wanted to.
You could make the base with RE, yes. But it's not 100% accurate. No, I can't remember why. I shouldn't try free-forming it. But I'm disappointed with myself that I didn't put it in the notes.
Yeah, I'm shattered, Michael.
But there was there was a reason for it. I can't remember now, but there was a morphological reason why I chose that spelling. I can't remember it at the time now. I didn't put it in the notes. Yeah, so some of these are things that I might have only used once. This isn't one that I've only used once, but that discussion about meter was, which is why I didn't put it in the notes. Okay, so if we just go back to the menu, unless there's any kind of questions about that basic functionality, Actually, there was one thing I was going to show. So this is a work in progress. I thought it might be worth putting in how you might research these things, because one of the barriers, certainly that I found and I still find, is understanding how this all works. And so, for example, this is a work in progress for me. I've been working on time with kids, and so far I've got clock, because we use a clock to tell the time. And I just like it when there's something unusual that you discover about a word, because it really does help kids remember it. So actually clock is short for clock with bells. Your clock with bells. So clock is actually originally clock with bells, shortened to clock, because of course clocks have bells. And then hour, a 12th of a day. Now this comes from the Egyptian counting system, where they used to count up to 12 on one hand. They used to use the joints to count up to 12. So that's why days are separated into 12 parts. And they used to do that 5 times. So they'd count up to 5 on the other hand. And that's why we've got 60 minutes in an hour, because that's how their hand counting worked. Whereas ours is decimal, we just had 1 finger equals 1. Second actually comes from the second division of the hour. So the hour is divided by 60 to give us the minute, and minute means the first small part. So we have hour, which is our standard measure of time, and then we have a minute, which is the first small part of the hour divided into 60. And these are called seconds because they're the second division of the hour. Isn't that weird, isn't it? I find that great, because that really, the language itself and the story behind the language helps kids remember, okay, so this is an hour divided by 60. This is divided by 60 again, because this is the second division. This is a work in progress. Now, sorry, I got carried away there. But it's interesting, and kids find it interesting. And so I want to add, for example, day to this. So if I type in day, this is typically how I would do it. I'd put day in here and I'd look it up. Etymonline's usually pretty good. So I'd look up day to see if there's something interesting in here, or a story that I can use to help kids remember what day might mean. Period during which the sun is above the horizon. So, you know, we've actually been talking about this because originally time was measured with sundials. So they only had the day, and they would break it into 12 because that's how they counted. But then they also needed to count at night time, which they couldn't do. And so they would start again at night from 1 up to 12. And that's why we've got 12-hour day, 12-hour night. That's why clocks go up to 12, because it comes around to night again.
So, Michael, before we move on, are you able to just kind of take us back a level and just help people navigate again what this kind of looks like from when they first go in, where the presets are, where the curriculum vocab is, where the preset bases, prefixes and suffixes are?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So there's the menu button. And in the menu, you've got all morphemes, which we haven't looked at, but this is basically all the morphemes that are included in the program, all pre-done for you. Something we haven't mentioned is chameleon prefixes. So we have sub, if you ever see a prefix that's got arrows on it, it means there are different versions of these prefixes, chameleon prefixes or assimilated prefixes. And often these will change depending on the base. So sub, if I roll with my mouse, all the different versions of this prefix here, the meaning stays the same because it is, but we change the spelling depending on what base it's going with. So that's really handy because these are hard to remember. Yeah, so we've got the all morphemes section. We've got choose morphemes, which we've been looking at a lot. And again, here we've got the save presets, lesson presets, and so on. So it really is just a matter of clicking on any one of these presets, hitting go, and away you go. You can start using it. If I go back to the menu, there are a few options. You can turn sound effects on and off. You know, there's little pops and clicks and stuff that happen. If you don't like the teacher tips, you can turn them on and off. So if I turn that off, then you know, you might prefer to have kind of a clean slate. You know, so if I bring in that suffix S preset, now there's no teacher note there cluttering it up. So you have that as an option, and you can choose here whether you want to be doing Adam Online or Wiktionary. If I return to the login, back here on this screen, I can edit these. So this little pencil will let me change the name. Let's say I want this to be year 5 and not year 3. I can change the name of that. This little plus button will let me share this preset with somebody. And the way the share works is with an account key. So this is my user key up here. And these are unique. This is just so people can't just randomly, you know, share stuff with people that don't want it. I've got to get the user, I've got to get the key from the person that I'm sharing this with. So if I copy this and put it in here and share, I've basically shared that with myself now. And after a short amount of time, you know, it takes a little while because it's not constantly checking, but a little notification will come up for the other person like that to say, Michael Shanahan shared a profile with you. I can accept that or reject it. And now I've got this that I've shared with myself available, and I can go in and look at my presets, but all the save function, everything's gone. So I can just view them in this mode. And if I don't want that anymore, I can just get rid of it from my list. And if I don't want to share that with myself, if I click on minus on the share, I can see I've shared it with myself there, and I can revoke that share. And so I can now, you know, anyone that I've shared it with will come up on that list, and I can remove them from sharing. So it goes both ways. The person you've shared with can remove it, or I can remove them from the list. I reckon that's pretty much a summary. Are there any questions or anything you think I've missed out?
Michael,
Bill,
a question
Sally?
just came up asking, you mentioned the lesson plans, where do people access them?
Yep.
I did answer that they are on the website. Is there an example of what they look like, and how does one subscribe?
Yeah, so if we go just to premium content part of the website, and we go to suffix S. So this is all based on the word cracking manual. So if I go to this suffix S preset, the internet's always slow when you need it to be fast, isn't it? So suffix S, students are introduced to suffix S. Students are introduced to the term noun and verb, as Sally mentioned, and a suffix, and there's a little definition of a suffix there. And this is also linked to the Playberry program, because this did come out of intervention and was linked originally with that Playberry program. So all the Playberry teaching points that link up are here. So this comes in at 21A in Playberry. And then it is step-by-step, introduce the word cracker, write a noun to structure, EG10 in the midsection. So it basically takes you through step-by-step.
Michael, just to clarify, it's the Playberry Tier 3 intervention program that we use the structure from.
Yes.
There was a question about how it fits with daily Playberry lessons. So it's Tier 1. We don't use them inside those lessons because they're fast-paced and to a structure. But it is often the case that teachers want to do a bit more work with morphology, go a bit deeper with kids, because kids just love this stuff. So that's when we've got a lot of teachers who are subscribed to both, to WordCracker Online and Playberry Laser, and they will do word study outside of the quick pace routines. of the daily Playberry laser lessons.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that we've got some lessons on there which go with the original basic word cracker. But remember, this is a tool for you to take as far as you want. So we've got about the suffixes, we've got all the spelling rules on there which you can use for teaching. We've got the matrices, but then it's up to you to take this tool like Michael's been demonstrating, and then the world's your oyster as to how you want to take it. And we do upload new stuff from time to time, but that's the main thing. It's a tool rather than a program, I would say.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So all of those built-in ones have a little lesson plan like this. A lot of them have games, some of them have videos, prefix lessons, spelling rules, doubling rule part 1.
Oh, the old doubling rule.
Yep. And it shows you how to use the downloadable resources. So there is a spelling rules chart, which has the add when you need to double, when you need to drop, when you need to change chart. And if we go to that section down the bottom here, we've got blank rules chart, which you can print off and fill in bit by bit with your kid, or we've got the completed rules chart that you can download that's got all of the rules pre-filled for you that you can use as a reference. And there's also a Playberry Tier 3 rules chart, which is the original one that was part of that Playberry Tier 3. A whole lot of printable game templates. These game templates are also in the online word cracker. So these are all those spinners are here with instructions. The instructions are not coming up there because I've got them turned off. If I turn those back on and go to the games, you can see it's got the instructions on how to play the game. You can spin it and each kid has their turn. You can cross the letter off. There's a little eraser there that you can use. And we've also got a bunch of diagnostic dictations there that you can use with kids to work out which rules they do and don't know around morphology. We've got ideas for whole class vocabulary challenges. And in addition to, this is all in the premium content, and this is essentially the word cracking manual made digital. But we also have, under Learn, we do quite often add more resources that are available to everyone. One of them is word cracker challenges. So this is basically a vocabulary game that you can play with a class, and Bill has gone through and made a whole lot of really done for you pre-made lessons. You can even play the video and do the activity with the class along to the with the video for all of these quite well used bases that are part of the online manual and the presets on the word cracker. Yeah, so the whole lot of content there to try and make it easy, because it is quite a complicated endeavor.
Morphology is the rabbit hole you never ever emerge from.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the secret, I think one of the things is to not get too carried away with that and try and keep it simple. I mean, as you saw tonight, I get excited about it, and so do kids. And I think that's like a slight danger of it, is that you can get sucked into that. And, you have to be careful that you do just take it step by step and don't introduce too much at once. Okay, any other questions or things I might not have covered?
Just checking it. It's like any deep resource. It takes a little bit of looking around. Well, probably a lot of looking around. And you, it's very, very deep. It's a very comprehensive setup that we've built here. Michael's done the heavy lifting and a lot of the brain work around what goes where. Yeah, we're very proud of it. But yeah, like anything worth it, it'll need some time looking around it and playing with it. to work out how you're going to use it. We have massive designs on this for not only primary teachers but secondary teachers, because we know what keeps a lot of kids locked out of maths and science in particular is the tricky vocab. And we know that if kids don't have vocab stored, they spend a lot of their science and maths lessons in cognitive overload trying to remember what the heck a word means. So if you're a secondary teacher or you're involved in a secondary school, I go into a lot of secondary schools now, and I see secondary schools making efforts to put a bit more time into teaching vocab of these subjects, particularly the ones with the Greek and Latin roots. So this is an incredible part, I reckon, of teaching secondary and secondary school. It's just starting to, I think, cotton onto that, Michael and Sal.
Yes, right. Absolutely. But you do need the basics first. So, you know, even with that secondary kid I was talking about that we're doing the nitrogen azo preset with, I haven't just jumped straight into that. You know, we've actually spent quite a bit of time talking about morphology, what it is, what a suffix is, what a prefix is, and so on. Because we can't underestimate how complicated that is when you're first introduced to it. And so, you know, even though you can do that, you know, all of them kind of need this gradual progression. You know, with her, I did start out with suffix S, and what does it mean? You know, what are these things called morphemes? You know, that whole in-depth look at that, you know, which we haven't talked about today. This has been more about the features of the new word cracker. But yeah, it's quite complicated and does take time, but I've never, you know, it's effort well spent, I think. You really see the lights come on for kids when they start looking at morphology, and they have a sense of pride when they can start understanding what these complicated words mean because they know the morphemes.
Now, Michael, there's a word that I could never remember what it meant, right? When I get kids coming in, and it's the word integer. Can you go find integer in the vocab presets? Because I had an epiphany when we were building this. So Michael's just scrolling down. You'll see it's in alphabetical order. Because Michael was talking about fractions before, and I could not stick the meaning of integer. And when we did the work on finding it, Michael will just blow it up and turn the meanings on and drag it in. Turns out that what really helps me is the understanding that an integer in some ways can be seen as the opposite of a fraction. So the teger or the tiger means touched, and in this case means not. So it's a number that has not been touched, in other words, has not been fractionalized. And I'll tell you what, I've never forgotten what integer means since. So the word parts made a difference for me. So thanks, Michael. I just needed to nerd out on integer because that's what we're very proud of.
And, well, look, Bill, I nerd out on perimeter. Peri means around and meter means measure.
Well, Michael, you have
kids
to show
are always
them
getting perimeter and area mixed up, aren't they?
And you're going to have to show them pericardium if you're going to show them perimeter.
Oh, pericardium. Is that in there?
I think it might be. So we've definitely got perimeter.
Cardiac.
Or maybe we don't. Maybe I just knew that cardio means heart and peri means around. And the
unless it's in health and PE.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it is.
Oh, no, I'm not sure that's in there. Maybe that's just one you need to make, Bill.
I'm going to have to. But what's the relationship between perimeter and pericardium? Well, the perimeter is to measure around, meter is measure, peri is around, and the pericardium is the lining that goes around the heart. And whenever a student says cardium or cardio, they'll know it's to do with the heart. I just love how this works. I get very excited.
Yeah, I know. It's great. Measure around, perimeter. And I discovered that area actually relates back to burning.
That's right. I remember you telling me.
Yeah, a plot of land that gets burnt to say I own this. That's the area that's been burnt. It was just called area, the plot that was burnt, which is a bizarre weird fact, but I find that the weird facts are the ones that are more likely to stick. The more strange it is, the more odd that story you can tell is about the origin of the morpheme or the word, the more likely it is the kid's going to remember it. And they really do remember it. It's very good. Okay.
Right, we're about to descend into nerding out here on people, but I know there are some word nerds in the audience. All right, so how are we looking, Michael? We've gone through login and sharing. We've gone through the library of presets, the affixes, suffixes, and bases. You've shown us how to save a preset if there's something that's not in there that we need. And you showed us a lot of lessons, or sorry, a lot of presets for particular students where you're kind of using that space to plan in, but also you're adding those extra morphemes and adding their meanings for students. We've had some quick examples of Michael's stuff in progress. Teachers have seen how they can share presets among themselves. So if a group of teachers are doing the same topic together, they can load up some vocab that kids will need to stick and they can quickly teach it. So I reckon I'm just going through our little box of things that we needed to tick off here. Sal, is there anything you think we've missed before we move into the giving people the code for their goodies?
They were pretty good. I think the only thing possibly is if you have a word and you don't know whether it's got a prefix or a suffix on it, or just perhaps we could go through that with an example.
Yeah, sure. Well, what are you thinking?
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a good word now.
Psychiatrist.
Yeah, psychiatrist. That's a good one. So you think? Yeah, I know there's probably some.
How do you spell that?
I know PSY. IATRIS. Well done.
Best.
And if you miss it, Michael, it's probably worth pointing out that you see the little red line come up under psychiatrist. The same spell check that'll work in Microsoft Word is also working away inside the word cracker.
Yeah. So psychiatrist, yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? And it's complicated, and you think, well, how do I know what the base is for that? So we have Adam Online that we can look it up on. So I'll just drag it down on the cracker and look it up on Adam Online. This is where I would start. So I see this is psychiatry plus suffix ist. So I can click on ist. Yeah, one ist, one who does or makes. So I can put in my ist. This is how I would go about it.
Yeah, it's just good people.
Yeah, and then I might hit save and just put in my meaning for ist. So I've got that bit sorted. Still got that on the cracker, so I can look up the rest. So this is psychiatry. Okay. From Greek, psyche, mind. Psyche plus iatria.
Yes, if you're coming to training tomorrow with Bill and me, that might come up as an example.
While you're finding it, Michael, Brooke made a cool comment. She said she once had a question on an exam that I had no idea about, but I used Morphology to figure out. The word was hepato. Oh, wow, I'm going to use my decoding. Hepatomegaly? Is that right? Anyway, what Brooke worked out cleverly, even though I can't pronounce this word, is hepato means of the liver, and megaly, abnormal enlargement. And she answered the question with flying colours. Well done, Brooke. I'm sorry I butchered the word though.
Yeah, so this is how I would do it. I would just go through and slowly build it up like this. It's not always easy. And so I find that I'm getting better at it, but I find Adam Online actually quite difficult to understand, especially when I first saw it. I was like, oh, I don't know what it's talking about, because it uses a lot of,
for a cheat here, Michael.
Terms.
I read Beneath the Surface of Words, and the root of psychiatrist is the IATR part.
Okay. Which means to
heal. So we can drop the E off psych Now, psych can also be considered a base, so we can have words with double bases. So psych is it body, mind, or spirit?
Yep.
I think it could be. Yeah. So the psych and the IATR can go together into the base part.
So we don't want the E on that.
No, that's right. So that's actually a base. Now, this doesn't matter too much for students, whether they see psych as a prefix or not. The word parts matter. They know a psychiatrist is a healer of, in this case, the mind. And IST is a person who. So it's a person who heals the mind.
Mind and spirit?
Mind and
Did you
spirit,
say?
yeah. I think
Mind
so.
and spirit, psych, yeah.
And
Psychiatrist.
some of you might have had sore feet and you've been to the podiatrist. And the IATR again means to heal, and the POD means foot.
Or a
So a healer of the foot.
pediatrician.
Sorry?
Or a pediatrician.
Well, ped is lover of, isn't it? No, ped is child.
Yeah.
File is lover of. Now we're going off in a really weird space, but yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, if you probably worked out the psych and the ist, you might have been able to put the IATR in and got that.
Pediatrician.
So,
No, you're right. The IATR nutrition, and I went off to lover of and all sorts.
yeah.
I'll be talking about francophiles next, seeing we just had the Olympics.
You do
It's
have to do a bit of searching sometimes, but the more
You do.
The more you do it, the more you start to recognise, oh, I think that's a base or a prefix or whatever.
That's right. And now there's a couple of resources I'd use that are not here, but I have plans to add them in. One is the Dictionary of Affixes. I really like this. It doesn't have any bases in it. It's just affixes in alphabetical order. And it's really easy because it's got very nice little simple definitions for them. Or if you go in there, it has a longer definition. So Dictionary of Affixes is great. And I do use ChatGPT, but I caution against it because it's not accurate. I think it tries to please you. And so sometimes it has given me just bizarre things. You know, sometimes you ask it to break up a word like this and it just doesn't quite understand. But sometimes if you're totally stuck, going in there will give me a bit of a boost as to where to look or what might be the affixes or the morphemes. And then I would always go and double check that with Wiktionary or Edam Online or another source, because as I said, sometimes it just gives you things that are just completely wrong. But it is a reasonable resource. And we do have plans to build AI into the cracker so that, you know, it can break stuff up for you. But I don't think it's reliable enough yet. I mean, it will be a job to do as well, but I think that would be fantastic if we could build that in, and certainly on my list to do.
Right.
I just am answering a question here about the E in sight being dropped. And I've just answered to everyone, you know, when you get into building a morphology resource and you go around, you start trawling resources looking for, you know, is it a prefix? Is it a base? Is it a double base? You'll see different opinions about whether something, for instance, you know, is a prefix or is a base or a root, a prefix or a root. So you've just got to make your mind up about what you're going to do with it. And these are decisions we had to make with the cracker. So those of you that have spent a long time looking at word parts or morphemes mightn't necessarily agree with the way we split things up because we've just had to make a call on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how far back do you go? You know what I mean? Like you can trace words a long way back to their origins, but we have to remember that this is a teaching tool and it's really trying to make things simple for kids. And that's what I was trying to talk about before. You can go down the rabbit hole of morphology and get so complicated that actually it kind of defeats the purpose of making this simple for kids and it being scaffolding for kids to understand language and develop their literacy. And it was actually something early on that really confused me about bases and roots and prefixes and suffixes, because I thought something was either a base, a prefix, or a suffix. And it was a bit of an eye-opener to me to realize that the same morpheme can be used as a prefix, a base, or a suffix. They're not set in their tracks. No. And I explain that to kids as well. It's a little bit like, it's a common misunderstanding with nouns and verbs that a word is a noun or a verb, but actually depends on how you use it. So, if we look at the nitrogen one, I actually had this discussion today. See, I've got as a prefix and as a base, because it's used as both. Michael, it just depends on the word.
There's a question, Michael, and I know there's an answer to this, and you'd know it. Is there a maximum number of presets we can add?
No. The only thing is it might start slowing down the system, because the computer has got to handle it. But I think in some of these, if we look in this Greek one, I think there's well over 100 in this Greek list, well over 100. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, if we're looking at presets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's at least 500 you can put in here before it starts slowing down. But there is there's no limit to it. We haven't put a limit on it.
I think a few people have just said challenge accepted, Michael Shannon.
Yeah, well, then I might have to start putting limits on it. But there isn't a limit on it. And remember as well that this is just one of 10 that you have. And so let's say I put 500 in this. Well, that means I can have 5,000 presets here, without it potentially slowing the system down. And if I'm sharing it with someone else as well, then that's, 10,000 if you add those in. So
well, a lot of word now.
I don't know if you can ever make that many. But if that becomes an issue, we can always add more capacity. But that kind of capacity is not difficult to add. It's more about the speed of the computer. And you will notice on really slow laptops, because I test this on a really old laptop that I have, just to make sure it does work on those old systems. But some of them, you can notice a speed difference on an older system, because it is quite, a fair bit of work with these big lists of stuff.
Now, we're at 4 minutes to go, folks, and I know people will want to get on their way. Should we move on to the code for the discount for people who joined us tonight?
Yeah, yep, sure. I'll put it in the chat.
Yes.
And now, of course, this is the one thing we didn't mention, but we also have an online training course for the WordCracker. So WordCracker training course is about equivalent to half a day of training, and it takes you through the majority of the inbuilt morphemes, bases, roots, affixes. But more than that, it also talks to you about how to teach it, how to get started, all of the stuff that we've really kind of glossed over tonight. But it is the course that Bill and Sally usually run face-to-face, recorded and put online. And normally that is $295. But we've got a voucher for everyone to do it for $100 off. So $195 to do the training course.
Which also gives them, Michael, a subscription.
Which also gives them, 12 months of access to the WordCracker.
And that's self-paced, that course, so you can do it, pick it up and put it down.
Yes, self-paced course. So you have access for 12 months to that training, which I think is good, because I think it's something that you will often need to come back to and remind yourself on, because it is so complicated. And after that 12 months, it reverts to an annual subscription, which is that $95.90 a year. So I've put that code into the chat. So when you check out, so if I was to purchase this, get cracking, I just put that, it says have a coupon down the bottom of the order form. I just paste that coupon in there and go up to the top and just double check, and there you go. It tells you it'll be 1 year for $195 and then $95.90. I don't know if you can see that, but
I can see it. Well, folks, make sure
did you code all this yourself? Yes, I did.
I said we did,
It
as
nearly
if Sally and
killed
I
me.
did any coding.
You didn't come out of the cave for about a year.
What Sal and I did do was sweat over spreadsheets that became the databases for the for the presets, didn't we,
That was
Sal?
a holiday.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
nice.
everyone.
Yeah.
So
There was a question about are we sharing the recording of the meeting?
oh yes, well we are recording it. We can do that. I'm wondering what's the best way to do this, Michael? People reach out and ask for it, or
well, we will have the contact list of everyone, don't we?
yeah,
Of participants, and so we can email it out. We can email out a link.
Okay.
I'll be putting it on YouTube and putting it in the website. So once it's up, we can email out a link to people.
Great.
And we have a Facebook page as well.
We do.
And also what Michael's explained today is also actually on the website, isn't it? You've got a video anyway, haven't you, Michael?
Yes.
Yes.
So down the bottom of this is essentially what I've just done in a video here, walking you through what I just did, in case you forget. So there's a pre-recorded version of this already here underneath this word cracker. Now, Bill, I realized that because you sent me a chat, I think I had only sent the discount code to you, not everyone in the group. Okay. But I've just added it for everyone.
Go to every vehicle.
I didn't realize Zoom had automatically sent it to you instead of everyone.
So the code
I hope
is
everyone got that. Yeah. And we could email that code out as well. Yeah, we've got everyone's email list. So yeah, that chat's tricky, isn't it? So we'll email out that link and the link to the video.
All right.
Beautiful.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. As we've taken you through that, hope you've got something out of it. Tell anyone you teach with what an incredible resource this is. The online word cracker really went from kind of a very rudimentary tool to absolute sick nuts next level. So yeah, sick nuts is something we need to put on the cracker, Michael.
We did have a question there about how it works for school. So it is slightly different for an individual in a school. It's probably worth going through that quickly. So if
you have to go, but if you want to hang on and see that the subscription, stay with us.
So if I go to buy now, so these are the individual membership options. If we scroll down to the school membership, it actually becomes quite affordable depending on the number of teachers you have. So if you have 30 teachers, it's only $2.50 a month per teacher. And there's just a little slider here. So you can see the yearly total as well as the cost per teacher, depending on your subscription. Because of the way the subscription system works, someone needs to sign up first as an administrator, and they're the owner of the account. And once they have purchased the subscription, then they add the teachers themselves. And so you can add teachers, remove teachers up to the limit of whatever you've purchased. So you're not stuck with that same set of teachers, because we realize teachers go on leave and so on. So yeah, that's quite flexible, and you get to manage who has access and who doesn't.
Okay, folks. Thank you very much. Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Sally.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
Bye.